So once you've got a list of parts sitting there, then it's just a matter of going in back to where we started from in our last session and opening up garments and double clicking on the style. So this opens up the style, and what we can do now is we can actually create a manufactured costing. Now at the moment, this button down here says wholesale because this item is still a wholesale item. It doesn't have any bill of materials or costs associated with it. We've just arbitrarily put in our last session that this item is going to cost about $10 to make, but it's not an actual manufactured costing. So to change it to manufactured, we can click on this button and it asks us this question. Are you sure you want to create costing details for this style? Yes to create costing details, which really means yes to create a manufactured costing style, and no to enter an import cost. For those of you scheduled for the next session, we'll go through how to do an import costing, but for today we're just going to concentrate on clicking yes. So we'll click yes there, and it will open up this list here. This is sort of like a list that we add to by adding our parts and our labour items, and I'll explain that in a minute, by clicking on the relevant items that we want to add to the style. So we would generally start off with our parts. We'll click parts here, and it will bring up this little dialog box. First thing it asks us for is a colorway. Now, if the part that we're adding to the style is associated with a particular color, it's important that we choose a color. Okay, and then here we have code, description, and attribute. We can use one of these dialog boxes to select a particular color, a particular fabric we want to assign to this blue item in our color list. So if we felt that description was the best way to find our fabric, we can just select the description and find our fabric, and it'll bring in the cost that we entered in when we created that part originally, and we can put in a yield, so maybe like 1.25 meters. And then we can click add again, and let's say I wanted to do white. I could put in white, and I can choose the white fabric code there. And you can see it's kept the previous yield from the last time I entered it, which is fine, and I can then click exit and save. Now, one thing that I haven't done here, if you had like a zipper or a button or some binding or something like that that was going to be included in the part costing regardless of its color, then you could leave the colorway blank and just select the relevant part code, and it would add that costing or that requirement for all colors within the style. I hope that kind of makes sense. The other thing we can do with this screen is we can add in labor charges. So if we click on this labor item here, again, it'll ask for a colorway, but typically with labor items, the color is really relevant. And so we can choose a labor item if it's already created in the system, or we could choose to create a new labor item, which I might do now. So if I type in test and let's say I've got a cut charge, okay, it'll ask me to add that to the list, and it'll allow me to put in a labour cost. What I tend to recommend you do is you put in a unit of measure here. So it might be the cost per minute to do this particular garment, or it might be a cost per hour or something like that. Or you might just want to arbitrarily put in a flat cost of the item. So you might just set the cost price at $1, and then you can determine what the yield might be. So it might cost me $20, oh, that's a bit much, say $5 to make this item as a test cut, and I can add that item into my list. And so I can do the same with other things here too. So I might go to labour, and I can I might have one called make again. I might have a make charge, and I might make that $2, and save my changes. So you can see there I'm starting to add little bits and pieces to my list. Now, one thing that you'll notice when I make a mistake, I've created these items here that have nothing in them. If I want to delete that item, I can just simply select the item and press delete, and it allows us to delete that record. And I can do the same thing for parts. I can delete that record as well. So you can see a list there. The interesting thing is we have no cost price being calculated here. Why, you might ask? Well, that's because in theory, even though all our items must share a similar selling price or wholesale price, they can in fact have a different manufactured costing per colour. So at the moment the system doesn't know which colour to report back on what the cost price is. So what you can do up here on colour, you can select an appropriate colour, and you can see it calculates a total cost price just for that white colour. And you can then decide which colour you want to look at. In this case it's all priced the same way, but you can pick the item that maybe is the most expensive to base your wholesale costings on. So if you double click on that see how I did that, I just double clicked on the wholesale price there, and it brings up this little box. I can then mess around with this costing. So I might say I want to retail it at $40. That's a markup of 170%. Or I might say, well, I want at least 200%, so it comes up at $44, $43, and then I might round that up to $45. So then down here it gives me my gross profit, and I can update that margin for all colours. So all colours will share a wholesale price of $45, but the gross profit and the markup may differ for different colours. And then when you finish there, you can save that style, and when you finish you can click exit. And if you go show all there, you can see that the W has changed from the W that was there has changed from that W and is now an M, and that means it is now a manufactured costing. If you want to, you can always double click back on the item and click back on the costing and go back in and change anything that you want to here. So for example, if I double click on the blue, I might change the yield to 2 meters here and save those changes, and it will update that yield. And I might do the same for the white, which again then just updates the costing. So if we go back to look at my costing here now, you can see my cost has changed, and so that's pushed my markup down and my gross profit down. It's a good idea once you've actually finished doing a full costing, if you have styles that have similar fabrics and similar style types, at that point then you could use this copy function of the actual style. So you see how I've gone into the style and I've clicked copy, and then I could create another style that might be similar, and I might call this one a top or something, and I can like change the department to top and change the category to something else. And then down here I can just go to the costings and adjust the yields, and I don't have to actually re-enter any of the parts again because they're all still there. The other thing to note, some people like to create all their parts all in one hit from the parts, the garments part screen that we were in earlier. However, some people like to add parts on the fly. I don't necessarily recommend it, but some of you do. It is possible, if you are missing a part, to go in and actually create it at this point here. So if I typed in 120 silk or something, it would ask me to add that value to the list, and then I can go in and create my part again, and then I could add that to the list. I've got to do a bit there, but if we add that to the list, you can see there I've added that part in, and I can then just set the yield, and I didn't put a cost in, so no cost has come through, but it would have if I'd created it. So you can do it that way as well, although I kind of recommend that you actually create all your parts in your parts view list first, and make sure you've got them all down so you know you've not missed anything out. Yeah, so that's really all I needed to go through with you today.